As promised earlier, we come to John Rawls. John Rawls, in liberal political philosophy, is the most important person in the 20th century. And he contributed the discussion on justice by his one major book titled A Theory of Justice, published in 1971. This one book made him famous. So much so that since then, anybody who is concerned with the problem of justice has to take note of what Rawls has got to say. You can agree or you cannot agree, or agree or don't agree, but you can't avoid Rawls. This is the position and importance of this book. So we must go into deeper what he actually and how he actually devised his theory of justice. Rawls was a professor of philosophy in the United States. Now, he starts with one admission that whatever I have thought about justice and whatever I have said about social and political and economic conditions, everything pertains to my non-Western world. That is to say, if anybody says that your theory is not applicable in Africa or Asia, he said, I am not concerned. In the preface, he said, everything, whatever my observation is limited to Western liberal society. So anyway, there is no problem in understanding what he wants to say. He, in searching the proper definition of justice and in the effort to establish a just society, philosophically, he went back to Locke, Rousseau and Kant. And I personally think he did quite rightly choose these three persons, because from Locke we get the first system or concept of positive law and positive justice. From Rousseau, the whole human civilization has got this idea of the concept of good, common good. In society, there is something, maybe abstract, but it is real at the same time. Something which is good for all, that common good has to be discovered. And Kant, who is famous for, I have said earlier, to define the individual as a moral category. That is to say, without the moral perception, human beings doesn't mean anything. So he goes back to it. Secondly, he was concerning himself, he was engaged in this problem of justice since the 1958. One or two articles he wrote, but the first book came in 1971. And that means for 12 or 13 years, the whole research or thinking is concentrated in this book. Just thinking of this time in the Western world, there were three isms or ideologies which he first confronted. First, utilitarianism. Secondly, intuitionism in philosophy. That is a very incoherent jumble of ideas, one can say. What is intuition? It is not a guidance to decision, but somehow there is a school of philosophy who said that intuition is important in evolving ideas within the mind, etc. And Marxism. And fourthly, I should say, to which I just tangentially referred in the last class, behavioralism, challenge of behavioralism. That is, value is unnecessary, value is irrelevant in social and political studies. he had to confront that also. So I repeat, utilitarianism, intuitionism, Marxism and behavioralism. He challenged all these things one by one in order to arrive at his own thesis about justice. Secondly, before we go into the basic matter of what he wanted to say, we must have a small reference to the methodology he used, and that he called reflective equilibrium.
So what is this reflective equilibrium?
Reflective equilibrium is a technical term. So your question is quite natural. It means that whenever there is any doubt, one must go on thinking and thinking about it. That is reflection, that is reflective activity of the mind. Aiming at a equilibrium means how to reconcile and harmonize where there is any contradiction. So he said that this is my philosophical method. I have thought about justice and repeatedly try to reconcile, try to find what is truth in others and what is ultimately ought to be defined as principle of justice. So this is technical term. Now, most important thing to start with is his assumptions. Very important. He went back to Locke, to Rousseau. I have just said, even in Kant, everybody thought in terms of a social contract about the origin of the state. I think you are at least you are aware of this social contract theory, as we say. This is just an assumption, because all contractualists, they assume that there was a state of nature before the formal state was created. Now, so Hobbes gave one type of picture, nasty, brutish sort. Locke says there are two agreements, two treaties. Rousseau said just the opposite of Hobbes, quite happy, full of happiness, etc., etc. Now, Rawls imagines his own state of nature, where he argues that he very frankly says it is hypothetical, but hypothetical argument is like this, that there was a point of time in human evolution when people gathered together to seek justice. So justice was not in the society, but they wanted to have justice, so that just as we are here together, so it is the hypothetical assumption that people gathered together to deliberate on how to get justice or establish a just society. And this is what he said, original position, quote unquote. It is his term, that there was an original position. And this original position, there was a veil of ignorance. It is most important concept in Rawls' argumentation, veil of ignorance. He said the people who gathered together, they were ignorant, but they were wise.
Ignorant but wise. Doesn't it sound some sort of an oxymoron?
No, when I explain it will be quite right. It is, I again repeatedly say that it is his hypothetical logic. He says, yes, it is my hypothetical imagination, but I must start from here, that attempt was made to arrive at the definition of justice by the people who were quite intelligent and wise in the sense to realize that they need justice. But simultaneously, they were ignorant about something. He said what they were ignorant about. First of all, they didn't know what they are worth of, what is their talent, what is their qualification, what is their power, They were ignorant about this. It is a logical necessity to make this hypothesis, because say that perfect agreement can emerge only when ego feeling is banished. If in a conference, suppose, some parties come, always there, nobody is prepared to sacrifice his point of time, no agreement will emerge finally. So in order to come to a position of consensus, he says that there was ignorant about this. That means basically simply the people were not selfish. They didn't have any inflated idea of their importance. It is very, in our common experience also you will find that it is very, very difficult to agree with a person who is very conscious about his educational qualification.
Yes, sir.
I am Harvard trained, I am this and that. It will be very difficult to argue with him, because that unstated assumption of his own superiority will hinder any consensus. So logically,
Yes, sir.
I think draws the assumptions is necessary. And what they were trying to achieve, justice, that is how to find out what is good for all, isn't it? So search for common good. Again, reference to Rousseau, search for common good. Rousseau in his social contract said that who is sovereign? He said not king, not body politic, no elected body, nothing of the sort. But the sovereign power should be given to the general will, capital G, capital W, general will meaning unvarnished common good, feeling of what is good for all. So we must search for this idea. And what they wanted basically, next assumption, he said they wanted to have as much as possible and as many as possible primary social goods. Again, I quote his term, primary social goods. And naturally, you can raise this question, what is this?
Yes, primary social goods.
So he has defined for you. He said, liberty and opportunity, income and wealth, and bases of self-respect. These are the things they say we want to have. And also, in addition, naturally there are primary natural goods like health, vigor, intelligence. So these are also we want. But we must have primary social goods, this. Okay? I got Rawls that the people had, that the contracting parties who gathered together had general wisdom but particular ignorance. Quote unquote.
Sir, who would ensure that they had all these things?
I think you have missed the point. I said everything is hypothetical
Sorry, sir.
in
Yeah.
order to arrive at his own definition of justice.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So just a hypothesis.
That unless you assume that, you cannot come to this position.
Yes.
Logic, everything is logic. So he said that what is the goal? The goal is to establish fairness in society. Fair, F-A-I-R. It is a very peculiar term in English, which cannot be very easily translated in other language. This what is sense of fairness. If you say impartial, not. If you say unjust, not just. Not. Fair. In English language, English sentiment, English usage, fair means complete unbiasedness, complete absence of bias. And therefore starts his concept of procedural justice, that even arriving at a concept of justice, this procedure of banishing bias is a first necessity. If some bias always is there, then you cannot arrive at the common good or essential good for the whole society. Right?
Yes, sir.
So ultimately she said that their deliberations were basically moral. It was not a legal haggling, it was not quarreling. So they are all eager to have how to establish a just society. I again repeat for your benefit, this is all logical hypothesis on which he builds his theory of justice. So ultimately he says that justice is fairness. Again, quote unquote, this is his world famous statement. Justice is fairness. Very short, pithy statement. And in which everybody, every person can have equally advantage of primary social goods. I again repeat, liberty, equality, that is equal opportunity, income and wealth, and self-respect. The self-respect obviously he has taken from Kant. The dignity of the individual is the core of the individual personality. If a person has no dignity, or a person is not giving any dignity in it, even when formal elections and democracy is there, Kant says that this is not the proper definition of individual. Every individual must have dignity of its own, and that has to be respected. So he also says that this is one of the primary social goods that they want. Now he says that they, in order to arrive at this, how to arrive at fairness in society, now the substantive contribution of Rawls is this. He said there are two principles. He said, I have two principles, he said, and two priority rules. Try to follow. First principle, everyone to have an equal right to the most extensive basic liberties. Principle number two, there must be fair equality of opportunity for all. That is, social and economic inequalities are to be organized in such a way that everyone gets advantage, equal advantage, especially the least advantaged sections of the society. So the concept of social justice comes in. And now he says that these two principles, simply speaking, first principle says liberty, isn't it?
Yes.
Second principle says equal opportunity. So, simply. Now they are to be read along with two priority rules. He says, first priority rule, liberty must have lexical priority over equality. Now I must explain the lexical.
Yes.
You don't get this word in dictionary. It comes from lexicon, means dictionary. So in dictionary, as we find that B comes after A,
Yes.
B always comes before C. So this is the priority, lexical
Yes.
priority. That means this priority cannot be overruled in any case. He uses the word lexical, that means no compromise, no overturning, no change. That priority has to be accepted. That means liberty first and foremost. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Second priority rule, the principle of fair equality must have priority over all arguments about efficient distribution and welfare. Because again, from contemporary experience, there are so many political systems in some parts of the world where the rulers or ruling class or the dictator, whatever it may be, they claim, I have got good intention and therefore what I dictate is for the benefit of the society and therefore you must accept it. I am the best judge. So he says that this is not on the excuse of efficient distribution through public ration shops, etc., etc. You cannot overrule the fairness of equality. Fair equality, that must have priority. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So this is, I think it appears a little bit complicated, but I have tried to make
Yes.
it as simple as possible. If you have any question,
So
even
that,
any doubt,
so that means that liberty should always predate equality, and we
yes,
should keep in mind equality when we are to distribute wealth among people. Equality should
quite
always
good,
have an
quite good.
upper hand.
I hope you also get the point.
Yes, sir.
That on no excuse that I am efficient for the the administrative efficiency, people have to do this and that. No arbitrariness in the name of
Equality. In the name of
efficiency.
efficiency. Yeah, yes, sir.
Hmm.
We should always keep equality in mind.
Because all ruling classes have a tendency
Yes.
to empower the bureaucracy in order to control the people. So no, he said that is no excuse. My goal is fair equality. But first, number one, you are quite right to note, number one, liberty must be maintained at all cost and at all time. Because again, he said that there are so many political systems where people given economic facilities, so many subsidies, so many gratis, etc. But liberty is lost. He said that that is totally inimical to justice. With justice, with capital J, justice must be fairness. And in order to achieve fairness, liberty is the first condition, foremost conditions where no compromise should be allowed. No, nothing is important if liberty is lost. That is his point. And then subsequently he says, okay, equality can be organized in this way or that way, but only when it shows that inequality, deliberate inequality, gives more benefit to the disadvantaged, deprived, marginalized sections of the society. To that extent, equality can be modified. But on no account, no tampering with liberty. I think
Yes.
this is his idea of justice, theory of justice, which made all political philosophers of all hues to sit up and think again. And it is not possible to ignore or avoid John Rawls anymore.